Hello, welcome back to another evening of shared stories and adventures. Tonight we're diving into the mysteries of Stranger Things. I'll be covering all the biggest questions I can fit in for tonight, but there's definitely more to come. So we'll start with what Volume 1 just revealed about Will Byers and the Upside Down, then move on to the new mysteries it created, like Dr. K, the mysterious wall, and Vecna's plan for 12 children. We'll also talk about what's still unresolved going into Volume 2 and the finale. Plenty to get talking about, but if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider subscribing down below. But for now, grab your flashlight and Eggo waffles, get comfortable, and let's dive into what we know, what we've learned, and what's still driving us mad. Let's start with the biggest mystery that's plagued the show since Season 1. What exactly is the Upside Down? And honestly, Volume 1 gave us some answers, while raising completely new questions. We've known since Season 4 that the Upside Down is frozen at the moment Will disappeared on November 6th, 1983. Nancy discovered this when she found her diary in the Upside Down version of her bedroom, and it stopped exactly at that date, so the whole dimension is stuck in time at that specific moment, which is absolutely bizarre when you think about it. But Volume 1 introduces something new that might explain why. In episodes 3 and 4, multiple characters encounter this massive organic wall in the Upside Down. Hopper and Eleven find it first when they're trying to infiltrate the military facility. It's this huge, fleshy barrier covered in vines and these bulging sacs of mysterious substance. Later, when Dustin, Nancy, Steve and Jonathan are in the Upside Down, tracking a wounded Demogorgon, they encounter the same wall but from a different angle. That's when Dustin has this brilliant realization. Using his math skills, he works out that the wall isn't just a wall, it's actually circular, like it's protecting or hiding something at the center, and the center lines up exactly with Hawkins' lab, the birthplace of the original gate that 11 opened back in 1983. I think this is one of the most intriguing new elements Volume 1 introduced. What's inside that circle? Is it the source of the Upside Down? Is it where Vecna's actually hiding? The show makes a point of showing us that wounded Demogorgons retreat to this wall, which suggests it's significant to the creatures and possibly to Vecna's whole operation. There's also Dr. K, who we see dissecting one of these organic sacs from the wall. She's clearly studying them, trying to understand what they are. The sacs look similar to the tentacles Vecna used to infect Will back in 1983, which we see in the opening flashback. So there's definitely a connection between whatever's in that wall and Vecna's ability to control and corrupt people. According to the Duffer Brothers, in interviews after Volume 1 dropped, we're going to get proper answers about what the Upside Down actually is in Volume 2. Matt Duffer specifically said they'll explain the nature of the dimension and how it all connects to Will's original abduction, which is brilliant because that's been the central mystery of the entire show. What's also interesting is how the Upside Down is both frozen and dynamic at the same time. The buildings and geography are locked in place at November 1983, but the ecosystem itself is alive. The vines grow and spread, the creatures move around. Vecna's been actively shaping parts of it. So it's not completely static, which raises questions about what frozen in time actually means in this context. Volume 1 also shows us more of the Upside Down's connection to our world. The barrier between dimensions is getting thinner, especially around Hawkins. The military set up their facility right at the main gate, and there are these cruel missions where people sneak in and out. It's become almost normalized, which is properly unsettling when you think about how terrifying it was in Season 1. But the biggest question Volume 1 raises is about Dimension X. Max mentions it when she's talking to Holly in Episode 3, and it seems to be connected to the Nevada cave where young Henry Creel first encountered the particles that gave him his powers. Is Dimension X the original source, and the Upside Down is like a copy or evolution of it? We don't know yet, but I'd say Volume 2 needs to clarify this because it's getting a bit confusing. The Upside Down remains the show's central mystery, even after 4 and a bit seasons. We know more than we did, but Volume 1 made it clear. There's a massive revelation still coming about what's inside that wall and what the dimension actually is. So the Upside Down has this hidden core that might explain everything, and I genuinely can't wait for Volume 2 to show us what's been there all along. But the Upside Down's not the only thing Volume 1 shed new light on. One of the biggest mysteries since the very first episode was why Will Byers was taken, and Volume 1 finally gave us the answer in the opening flashback. The season starts on November 12th, 1983, 6 days after Will's disappearance. We see him in the Upside Down, muttering the lyrics to "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by The Clash, which is the song Jonathan played for him to drown out their parents arguing. He's been evading the Demogorgon for nearly a week at this point, hiding in the Upside Down version of Castle Byers, trying to survive, but then the Demogorgon finally catches him. It drags Will to Vecna, who's been there since 1979, when 11 banished him. And this is where the reveal hits. Will wasn't a random victim. Vecna specifically chose him, calling him his first experiment. He binds Will with these organic tentacles, pushes them down his throat, and promises they'll do such beautiful things together. I honestly didn't see this coming, even though loads of fans had theorised about it. Will's not just some kid who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was deliberately infected by Vecna as Patient Zero, the template for whatever plan Vecna's been building toward for years. This recontextualizes everything. Will's possession in Season 2, his connection to the Mind Flayer, his ability to sense when the Upside Down is near. All of it stems from this moment. Vecna turned him into a bridge between dimensions, a hybrid infected with particles from Dimension X. But here's where Volume 1 gets brilliant. In Episode 4, after Vecna attacks the Mach-Z military base and captures Holly, along with other children, Will has this breakthrough. He's been having these seizures throughout Volume 1, connecting him to the hive mind. He can see what the Demogorgons see, feel what they feel. It's been painful and terrifying, but in that final moment, he realizes he can use it. 3 Demogorgons are closing in on Mike, Lucas and Robin in different locations around Hawkins. Will's watching through the hive mind, and Vecna's taunting him, calling him weak, saying Will showed him what was possible because he broke so easily. That's when Will stops the Demogorgons, just freezes them mid-attack. Then he lifts them into the air telekinetically and twists their bodies apart, exactly the way Vecna kills his victims. It's this absolutely massive moment where Will goes from being the victim to potentially being the key to defeating Vecna. According to the Duffer Brothers, Will can tap into Vecna's powers because of their connection through the hive mind, but it's proximity-based. He can only do it when he's close enough to Vecna for the connection to be strong. So he's not suddenly as powerful as 11, but in the right circumstances, he can access these abilities. What's really interesting is why it happens in Episode 4 specifically. Earlier in Volume 1, Robin has this conversation with Will about accepting who you are. She talks about her own journey coming out and embracing her identity. Will's been struggling with so much, his trauma from the Upside Down, his feelings for Mike, his sense of being weak and useless compared to the others. But in that moment when the Demogorgons are attacking, Will remembers what Robin said. There's this montage of home video footage showing young Will happy and carefree. It's the same memories Joyce, Jonathan, and Mike used to break him free from the Mind Flayer's control in Season 2. Will accepts himself, and that emotional shift is what unlocks his ability to fight back. Noah Schnapp mentioned in interviews that the Will-Vecna relationship is very similar to Harry Potter and Voldemort, which is spot on. Will's essentially Vecna's Horcrux, infected with his power, but using it against him. It's a brilliant parallel, and Schnapp absolutely nails the performance. Fun fact, Noah Schnapp sent the Duffer Brothers a long, heartfelt text message after filming the Episode 4 power scene, telling them how grateful he was for the way they'd written Will in the final season. You can tell this role means loads to him. The episode 4 ending is properly cathartic. Will spent 4 seasons being the victim, the possessed one, the kid who needs saving. Now he's stepping up as potentially the most important weapon against Vecna. And Vecna completely underestimated him, which is going to be his downfall. I think this is some of the best character work the show's ever done. Will's arc from scared kid to powerful hero feels earned, and tying it to his emotional growth and self-acceptance makes it even more meaningful. Will's not just a victim anymore, and episode 4 made that crystal clear in the best possible way. But Will wasn't the only character whose story took a dramatic turn in Volume 1. Episode 2 is literally titled The Vanishing of, with the name obscured, and it turned out to be Holly Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's little sister. Before Holly's abduction, there were warning signs that something was wrong. In episode 1, we learn she's been talking to herself, which concerns her teacher and her parents, Ted and Karen. She keeps mentioning someone called Mr. Whatsit, this imaginary friend, who's apparently been chatting with her. Of course, it's not an imaginary friend at all. It's Vecna, grooming her for what's coming. The abduction happens in episode 2, and it's absolutely brutal. A Demogorgon breaks into the Wheeler house through Holly's bedroom, tearing open a new gate right there in her room. Karen and Ted try to protect her, and they both get injured in the attack. Ted Wheeler, who slept through basically every major event in the series, finally wakes up for this, but it's too late. The Demogorgon drags Holly into the Upside Down. I mean, the Wheelers have been through so much at this point. Their son Mike is constantly fighting interdimensional monsters. Their daughter Nancy nearly died multiple times, and now their youngest child gets taken. It's properly heartbreaking, especially watching Karen and Ted realise they couldn't stop it. What makes Holly's abduction even more significant is the parallel to Will's disappearance. The episode title directly references the vanishing of Will Byers from the series premiere, bringing everything full circle. Will was the first child Vecna took back in 1983, and now, 4 years later, he's taking Holly and other children to complete his plan. There's also the date significance. Holly's taken on November 3rd, 1987. Will disappeared on November 6th, 1983. Lucas points out in the show that it can't be coincidence that both happened so close to that date. The Upside Down is frozen on November 6, 1983, and November 6, 1959 was when Henry Creel's play opened in the first shadow. That date keeps appearing, and Volume 1 makes it clear there's a reason. At the end of Episode 3, Holly ends up in Vecna's mindscape, which is where he traps the consciousness of his victims. She's in this desert landscape that looks like the Nevada caves where young Henry Creel first got his powers. And that's where she encounters Max Mayfield, who's been trapped there since her death at the end of Season 4. The Holly and Max meeting is one of the most emotional moments in Volume 1. Max explains she's been conscious this whole time, stuck reliving Henry Creel's memories on a loop. Holly's terrified and confused, but Max becomes this source of comfort and protection for her. To be fair, Nell Fisher does a brilliant job as the recast Holly. The character went from being a background toddler to a central figure in the final season's plot, and Fisher handles the material really well. Holly's abduction raises the stakes massively because she represents innocence. Will, Max, the other victims, they were teenagers who at least had some ability to fight back or understand what was happening. Holly's just a little kid who got targeted by a monster wearing a friendly mask. Holly's story brings everything full circle while putting her in one of the most dangerous positions imaginable. And speaking of Holly's situation, let's talk about where she ended up and who she found there. One of the biggest questions going into Season 5 was what happened to Max after her clinical death, and Episode 3 gave us the answer. She's trapped in Vecna's mind. Max has been in a coma since the Season 4 finale. Vecna broke her limbs, took her eyes, and killed her. Eleven managed to restart her heart, but Max never woke up. Her body's been lying in Hawkins General Hospital for 18 months, breathing but empty. Doctors had no idea if she'd ever wake up, and Lucas has been sitting by her bedside, basically the entire time, refusing to give up hope. But at the end of episode 3, when Holly gets pulled into Vecna's mindscape, she encounters Max. And Max is conscious. She's been awake this whole time, trapped inside Henry Creel's memories, experiencing them on a loop. She's in this desert landscape that looks exactly like the Nevada caves where young Henry first encountered the stolen government technology that transported him to Dimension X. To be honest, this was such a relief. We spent over 3 years wondering if Max was gone, or if there was any part of her left. Sadie Sink gets to actually perform again, instead of just lying in a hospital bed, and Max gets to be active in the story, even though her physical body is elsewhere. The way Max explains it to Holly is really clever. She's caught between worlds, neither fully consumed by Vecna nor fully freed from him. When Vecna kills someone, according to Dr. Brenner's warning from earlier seasons, he consumes them. Part of Max is with Vecna, living inside his consciousness, experiencing his past. She's been reliving Henry Creel's memories from his childhood, the Rainbow Room at Hawkins Lab, Hawkins High School in 1959, his family home, all of it playing out over and over. But there's one place she's found that Vecna won't go: the cave. The Nevada cave represents the moment. Henry's life changed forever when he was infected with the particles that became the Mind Flayer. That memory terrifies him, and Max uses it as shelter. This connects directly to The First Shadow, the stage play prequel that explores Henry's origin story. If you've seen the play or read about it, the cave sequence is central to understanding how Henry became Vecna. The show's leaning into that mythology now, which is brilliant for longtime fans. What's really interesting is Max's potential role going forward. She's inside Vecna's mind, walking through his memories, and she's the only person who can do that. She might be able to find weaknesses, understand his fears, maybe even tamper with his memories somehow. Jamie Campbell Bower mentioned in interviews that Max is absolutely a catalyst for something major that happens later in the season. The question Holly asks is the key one. How can Max be in a hospital bed and in this world at the same time? Max doesn't have a complete answer, but the implication is that consciousness can exist separately from the body in Vecna's realm. Her mind is trapped with him, while her body stays in our world, sustained by Eleven's intervention. I think this is one of the most clever solutions the Duffers could have come up with. Max isn't just dead or permanently comatose, she's active, helping Holly, and potentially the other captured children, all while being physically unreachable. It raises the stakes because we know she's alive and suffering, but rescuing her isn't as simple as waking her up. Max being alive and conscious inside Vecna's mind changes everything about how the final battle might play out. But Max isn't the only surprising return in Volume 1. In one of Volume 1's most unexpected moments, Carly, also known as 8 from that divisive Season 2 episode, returns, and she's in serious trouble. Let's rewind a bit. Back in Season 2, Episode 7, titled The Lost Sister, 11 goes to Chicago to find Carly after seeing her in one of her psychic visions. Carly's the only other surviving test subject from Hawkins' lab that we'd met besides 11 and 1. She's got the power to create illusions, making people see things that aren't really there. In that episode, she's leading a gang of misfits, hunting down the people responsible for their torture at the lab. The episode was properly controversial. Loads of fans hated it because it pulled us away from Hawkins, right when the Mind Flayer plot was heating up. It felt like a detour, and Carly's storyline was never really resolved. 11 left Chicago to go back and help her friends, and we just never saw Carly again. Until now. In Episode 4, Hopper and 11 are infiltrating this military facility that's been built inside the Upside Down. They've encountered these sonic weapons that can specifically target and paralyze people with psychic abilities, which is terrifying for 11. After seeing these weapons, they assume the military must have captured Vecna and turned him into some kind of weapon, so they're expecting to find Vecna. But when they break into the facility's main chamber, they find Carly instead. She's hooked up to this massive machine, clearly being held against her will, and the military's using her somehow. Her illusion powers are being harnessed, though we don't know exactly what for yet. This raises a massive question. Is anything we're seeing actually real? Kaylee can create incredibly convincing illusions. Is the facility itself real? Or is it something she's projecting? Did Dr. K use Carly as bait to draw in 11? The show doesn't answer this in Volume 1, which is brilliant because it makes you question everything. According to the Duffer Brothers in their Variety interview, bringing Carly back served two purposes. First, they wanted to tie up the loose thread from Season 2 and not leave that storyline dangling. Second, and more importantly, they felt Linnea Bertelsen didn't get a proper chance to show what she could do in that episode. So they brought her back to give her a better role and to integrate her into 11's final arc. I'll be honest, I didn't expect this at all. But to be fair to the Duffers, it makes sense. If you're going to introduce another lab subject with unique powers and then just drop her, it feels incomplete. And if the military's hunting 11, of course they'd go after any other psychics they could find. Kaylee's return also raises questions about whether there are other numbers out there. If 8 survived and was captured, did any others make it out of the lab massacre? Probably not, but the possibility's there. Carly being trapped and exploited by the military adds another layer to the threats our heroes are facing. And speaking of the military, let's talk about their new leader. Volume 1 introduces Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton, and she's hunting 11 with terrifying efficiency. Hawkins has been under military quarantine since the end of Season 4. The earthquake that tore the town apart gave the government the excuse they needed to move in with full force. There are checkpoints everywhere. The Mackay's base controls access to the Upside Down, and civilians are basically living under occupation. It's got this Red Dawn vibe, where the military's supposed to be protecting people, but really just making everything worse. Latarcol Sullivan is still around from Season 4, the guy who wanted to kill 11 because he blamed her for everything. But the real threat is Dr. K. Linda Hamilton brings this cold, calculating presence to the role. She's not emotional or cruel, just absolutely focused on her mission. And her mission, as she keeps repeating, is simple. I need the girl. The sonic weapons are one of Dr. K's most terrifying innovations. In Episode 3, when 11 and Hopper are trying to infiltrate the Upside Down facility, Sullivan's team deploys this weapon that specifically targets people with psychic abilities. It emits a frequency that normal people can't hear, but for someone like 11, it's absolutely paralyzing. She collapses, bleeding from her nose, completely helpless until Hopper shoots the device. Frank Darabont, who directed Episodes 3 and 5, explained in interviews that the sonic weapon is a clever storytelling device because it levels the playing field. 11's insanely powerful, but this weapon can shut her down instantly. It makes her vulnerable in a way we haven't seen since she lost her powers in Season 3. But Dr. K's not just hunting 11. She's built this entire research facility inside the Upside Down, right at the main gate. She's got specimens, equipment, a whole operation studying the dimension and its creatures. There's this scene where she's dissecting one of those organic sacs from the mysterious wall, trying to understand what it is. The sac bleeds this weird fluid, and she's taking samples, analysing it. I mean, she's got an agenda we don't understand yet. Is she trying to weaponize the Upside Down? Is she genuinely trying to close it and save Hawkins? Or is there something else going on? Linda Hamilton mentioned in interviews that Dr. K has a specific goal to stop the madness, but what that means exactly is unclear. What's really unsettling is how methodical she is. She's not panicking about the interdimensional monsters or the town falling apart. She's treating it like a research project, and 11 is just another specimen she needs to acquire. That coldness makes her scarier than Sullivan, who at least showed emotion. The facility itself is properly creepy. It's built into the organic matter of the Upside Down, with these corridors that look half military, half biological. You can see the vines growing through the walls, the particles floating in the air. It's like the military's trying to impose order on chaos, and it's not working. There's also this question of how much Dr. K actually knows. Does she understand what Vecna is? Does she know about the Mind Flayer? Or is she operating with incomplete information, thinking she can control something that's way beyond her understanding? To be honest, I don't trust her at all. Even if her intentions are good, she's clearly willing to hurt people to achieve her goals. The sonic weapons, the hunt for 11, the experiments, none of it suggests someone who cares about the kids caught in the middle. Dr. K represents a different kind of threat than Vecna, and Volume 2 will hopefully reveal whether she's misguided or genuinely villainous. But the military's not the only threat the group is dealing with. Volume 1's finale revealed Vecna's endgame, and it's absolutely horrifying. He needs 12 children to complete his plan, and he's already taken several, including Holly. Episode 4 ends with Vecna making his move. He appears at the Max Z military base, where Hawkins' remaining children are being held for protection. The military thinks they're safe behind their fences and weapons, but they're not even close to ready for what happens. Vecna just walks through their defences like they're nothing. The soldiers open fire, but he brushes off the bullets. He uses his telekinetic powers to snap necks, crush bodies, and throw people across the compound. It's one of the most brutal sequences in the entire series, watching this military force get absolutely decimated by a single entity. Within minutes, the base is in ruins and most of the soldiers are dead. Then Vecna takes what he came for, the children. Holly's already in his mindscape from the earlier abduction, but he needs more. He captures several kids from the base, including 3 of Holly's friends, and drags them into the Upside Down. During the attack, Vecna has this conversation with Will through their psychic connection. He explains why children are his targets. They're perfect vessels, he says, because their minds and bodies are easier to break and mold than adults. He can reshape them, turn them into something loyal to him. Most disturbingly, Vecna tells Will that he showed him what was possible. Back in 1983, when Will broke under Vecna's influence so quickly, it proved that children could be transformed. Will was the template, the proof of concept. Now Vecna's scaling up that experiment to 12 children at once. Later in the episode, Will has a vision while connected to the hive mind. He sees these 12 children attached to organic spires in what looks like Dimension X. They're arranged in a circle, suspended in the air, with tentacles connecting them to the ground. It's properly nightmare fuel, seeing kids turned into these living batteries or conduits for whatever Vecna's planning. Why 12 specifically? The show doesn't explain it in Volume 1. The number 12 has symbolic significance in loads of things. 12 apostles, 12 months, 12 houses of the zodiac. But what it means for Vecna's plan isn't clear yet. Is it about power? Some kind of ritual? A way to merge the dimensions permanently? What we do know is that Vecna's already got 4 children. Holly and her 3 friends make up the current count. That means he needs 8 more to complete whatever he's building. Jamie Campbell Bower's performance as Vecna in episode 4 is genuinely terrifying. He's evolved since season 4, looking more decayed, more integrated with the Upside Down. The vines have grown further into his body. His voice has this deeper, more inhuman quality. He's not pretending to be human anymore. He's fully embraced being a monster. The Mac-KZ attack also shows just how powerful Vecna has become. In season 4, he was vulnerable. Steve, Nancy, and Robin nearly killed him with Molotov cocktails and a shotgun. But 18 months later, he's stronger, and conventional weapons barely slow him down. Vecna's plan is now completely clear. Create an army of 12 controlled, powerful vessels to reshape the world in his image. But the specifics of how and why are mysteries. Volume 2 needs to answer. Now, let's talk about some mysteries that span the earlier seasons but got new context in Volume 1. Volume 1 really hammered home that November 6th is significant across multiple timelines, and it's definitely not a coincidence. Anyone who's been with the show from the beginning knows that November 6th, 1983 is when Will Byers disappeared. It's the date that started everything. The moment the Demogorgon came through into our world and took Will. Netflix even turned it into Stranger Things Day, celebrating the show's anniversary on that date each year. But Volume 1 makes it clear this date goes way deeper than just Will's abduction. In Season 4, we learned that the Upside Down is frozen at November 6th, 1983. When Nancy found her diary in the Upside Down version of her bedroom, it stopped on that exact date. The entire dimension is stuck at that moment in time, which has always been mysterious, but Volume 1 suggests there's a specific reason. Then there's the connection to The First Shadow, the stage play prequel that explores Henry Creel's backstory. In that play, we learn that November 6th, 1959 was the opening night of the school production Henry starred in. That's 24 years before Will's disappearance on the exact same date. Eagle-eyed viewers noticed the Duffer Brothers included references to this in Volume 1. Holly Wheeler gets taken on November 3rd, 1987. That's just 3 days before November 6th, 4 years after Will's abduction. Lucas Sinclair even points out in the show that the timing can't be coincidence. The anniversary of Will's disappearance is approaching, and Vecna's making his move right around that date again. I mean, this can't be random. The show's putting too much emphasis on these dates for it to be meaningless. There's something about November 6th that matters to Vecna, to the Upside Down, to the whole mythology. The Duffer Brothers confirmed in interviews after Volume 1 that they will explain the time freeze aspect of the Upside Down in Volume 2. Matt Duffer specifically said they'll address why that date is so important and how it all connects, which is brilliant because we've been wondering about this since Season 4. My theory, and this is just speculation, is that November 6th, 1983 is when something fundamental changed about the barrier between dimensions. 11 opened the first gate earlier that week, but maybe November 6th was when the Upside Down locked onto our world permanently. Maybe it's when Vecna figured out how to freeze it in place, creating a perfect copy of Hawkins he could control. Or maybe it goes back further. Maybe November 6, 1959, when Henry was performing in that play, is when he first encountered something that set all of this in motion. The First Shadow suggests that Henry's transformation happened around that time, so perhaps that date has been significant to him for nearly 30 years. To be honest, I love this kind of attention to detail. The fact that the Duffers have been planting these date references across multiple seasons and even the stage play shows they've got a plan. It's not just random timeline stuff, it's mythology. The November 6 pattern is building towards something, and I genuinely can't wait for Volume 2 to reveal what makes that date so bloody important. But speaking of patterns, let's talk about some character arcs from Volume 1. The Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan love triangle is alive and well in Volume 1, and it's heading toward a breaking point. Nancy and Jonathan are still together at the start of Season 5, but the cracks are showing. They've been together for years now, and the relationship feels strained. There's not a lot of communication happening. They're both clearly stressed by everything going on, and you can tell neither of them is particularly happy. Steve, meanwhile, has never really moved on. He admitted at the end of Season 4 that he's still in love with Nancy, and Volume 1 shows he's been quietly pining for her the entire 18 months since. He's still the babysitter, still taking care of everyone, but you can see him looking at Nancy with this mix of longing and regret. The big revelation comes when Murray discovers an engagement ring hidden in a cassette tape in Jonathan's stuff. Jonathan's been carrying this ring around, planning to propose to Nancy, but he hasn't actually done it yet, which tells you everything about the state of their relationship, doesn't it? If you're confident and happy, you propose. If you're hesitant and uncertain, you carry the ring around for months without using it. Steve ends up having a conversation with Jonathan where he basically says what everyone's thinking. They're both miserable. Nancy and Jonathan have been going through the motions, staying together out of habit or obligation rather than genuine happiness. And Jonathan can't really deny it, because it's true. I mean, this has been brewing for seasons. Nancy and Steve had real chemistry in season 1, even though they were very different people. Then Nancy chose Jonathan, and they've been together ever since. But Steve's grown and matured, becoming this genuinely great person, while Nancy and Jonathan have kind of stagnated as a couple. There are these moments in Volume 1 where Nancy and Steve work together, and the old spark is still there. Robin notices it. Other characters notice it. Even Jonathan seems to notice it, which is probably why he hasn't proposed. To be fair, this is realistic. Sometimes relationships that made sense at one point stop making sense later. Nancy and Jonathan bonded over trauma and their experiences with the upside down, but that's not necessarily a foundation for a lasting relationship. The love triangle needs resolution, and with only 4 episodes left, someone's heart is definitely getting broken. My money's on Jonathan and Nancy ending things, but who knows? Maybe the apocalypse will make them realise they want to be together, after all. Speaking of emotional journeys, let's talk about Will's struggle with identity and how it connects to his powers. Volume 1 doesn't explicitly state Will's feelings for Mike, but it's absolutely there, and it's tied directly to his power breakthrough. Will's been struggling with his identity throughout the entire series. He's the kid who got taken, the one who was possessed, the one everyone sees as fragile and in need of protection. He's also been dealing with feelings he can't express, particularly his love for Mike, which has been building since the early seasons and became more obvious in season 4 with the painting subplot. In Volume 1, Will's still carrying all of that emotional weight. He's isolated, he's afraid, and he doesn't see himself as strong or capable, which is exactly what Vecna sees in him too, calling him weak, a failed spy, someone who broke easily. But then Robin has this conversation with him. Robin, who came out in season 3 and has been openly herself ever since, talks to Will about acceptance. She doesn't force him to say anything or come out explicitly, but she shares her own journey of embracing who she is and finding strength in that authenticity. It's a really beautiful scene, handled with proper care and sensitivity. Robin's not pushing Will, just offering solidarity and understanding. And you can see it resonating with him, this idea that accepting yourself, even the parts that scare you, can be empowering rather than weakening. Later, when Will's powers manifest in episode 4, there's this montage of home video footage showing young Will. Happy memories of him as a kid, before all the trauma, before the upside down. These are the same memories Joyce, Jonathan and Mike used to break him free from the Mind Flayer's control in season 2. They represent who Will really is underneath all the pain. I think the connection between Will's self-acceptance and his powers is one of the most thoughtful pieces of character work the show's done. His strength doesn't come from suppressing who he is or trying to be someone else. It comes from embracing himself fully, which allows him to channel the connection to Vecna in a way that serves him rather than controls him. Noah Schnapp brings so much emotional depth to this arc. You can see the internal struggle, the fear, the breakthrough, all of it playing across his face. He's been with this character for 9 years, and the way he handles Will's journey in Volume 1 is properly moving. The show never makes Will's sexuality explicit in Volume 1, and that's fine. It's there for anyone paying attention, but it's also folded into the larger theme of accepting all the parts of yourself, including your trauma, your fears, and your identity. Mike remains completely oblivious, which is both frustrating and realistic. He's wrapped up in his own stuff with 11, and he genuinely doesn't see what's right in front of him. Will's journey towards self-acceptance unlocks his power, and that's beautiful storytelling that respects both the character and the audience. Now, let's talk about someone who's struggling in a very different way. Dustin Henderson has always been the heart of the group, but Volume 1 shows him struggling with Eddie's death in ways that worry everyone. Eddie Munson died at the end of season 4, sacrificing himself to give the others time to attack Vecna. He and Dustin had become really close during that season, bonding over Hellfire Club and their shared love of D&D. Eddie's death hit Dustin harder than anyone else, and 18 months later, he still hasn't processed it properly. In Volume 1, Dustin's wearing Eddie's Hellfire Club shirt constantly. He's also made plans to restart the club at school in Eddie's honour, which is lovely in theory, but has made him a target. The bullies at Hawkins High, the ones who blamed Eddie for everything that happened, haven't forgotten. They see Dustin wearing that shirt and take it as provocation. There's this scene in episode 1 or 2 where Dustin gets into a fight at the cemetery. He's visiting Eddie's grave, and some of the bullies show up and start giving him grief. Instead of walking away, Dustin antagonizes them. He talks back, pushes their buttons, basically asks for a fight. They beat him up pretty badly, leaving him bruised and bloodied. But here's the thing, Dustin lies about it. When Steve asks what happened, Dustin claims he had a bike crash. Steve can tell immediately that he's lying, but Dustin won't admit the truth. This isolation, this refusal to let people in, is completely out of character for someone who's always been open with his friends. Throughout Volume 1, Dustin's just different. He's snippy with Steve, which never happened before. Their bromance, one of the show's best relationships, is strained because Dustin's carrying all this unprocessed grief and turning it into anger. He snaps at people, he's reckless during the cruel missions, and he's clearly not okay. The Duffer Brothers mentioned in interviews that Dustin's always been the one who holds the group together. When Mike and Lucas fought in Season 1, Dustin was the peacemaker. He's the heart, the glue, the optimist. So seeing him broken like this affects everyone else too. If Dustin's not okay, the whole dynamic suffers. I mean, Eddie's death was heartbreaking, and it makes perfect sense that Dustin would be the most affected. They had this beautiful friendship that was cut short, and Dustin feels like he should have saved him, or done something different. To be honest, watching Dustin struggle is one of the more painful parts of Volume 1. He needs that truth bomb from Steve, that moment where someone forces him to confront his grief instead of burying it in anger. Dustin's arc is about learning to grieve properly, and I hope Volume 2 gives him that resolution. But grief isn't the only thing weighing on the characters. Volume 1 gives us more insight into Hopper's daughter Sarah and why he's so fiercely protective of Eleven. We've known since Season 1 that Hopper had a daughter who died of cancer. Sarah was young, maybe 6 or 7, and her death destroyed Hopper's life. His marriage fell apart, he developed problems with pills and alcohol, and he basically gave up until he came to Hawkins and found purpose again in protecting the kids. But Volume 1 adds new context through additional flashbacks. We see more of Sarah in the hospital, Hopper reading to her, trying to keep her spirits up. In one scene, Hopper tells Eleven about how the doctors thought Sarah would make it. They were optimistic based on how hard she was fighting, how strong she seemed despite the illness. Sarah ended up passing away anyway. Despite the doctor's hope, despite her fighting, despite everything Hopper did, she died. And that experience, watching his daughter slip away when everyone thought she'd survive, has shaped every decision Hopper makes about Eleven. Throughout Volume 1, Hopper's absolutely terrified of losing Elle. When they're infiltrating the military facility and the sonic weapons are deployed, when Eleven's in danger, you can see Hopper's panic. It's not just concern, it's this deep-rooted fear that he's going to watch another daughter die and be powerless to stop it. David Harbour plays these moments brilliantly. You can see the trauma underneath Hopper's tough exterior, this wound that never healed. Sarah's death isn't just backstory, it's the driving force behind why Hopper refuses to let anything happen to Elle, even if it means being overprotective or making decisions she doesn't agree with. I think this is just tragedy, not mystery. Some fans have theories that Sarah's death was connected to Hawkins' lab or the Upside Down, but Volume 1 suggests it was simply cancer. Sometimes terrible things happen for no grand reason, and that randomness makes it even more painful. To be honest, these scenes are gutting. Watching Hopper relive that loss while trying to prevent it from happening again with Eleven adds so much emotional weight to his actions in Volume 1. Sarah's death continues to define everything Hopper does, and it's why he'll go to any length to keep 11 safe. Speaking of 11, let's talk about her situation in Volume 1 and how she's been surviving under military occupation. 11 spent most of Volume 1 in hiding, moving through underground tunnels to avoid the military, and it's properly tense. It's been 18 months since the end of Season 4. Hawkins is under full military quarantine, with checkpoints, patrols, and constant surveillance. Dr. K and Lieutenant Kolar Sullivan are actively hunting 11, using those sonic weapons and loads of resources to track her down. So Elle's basically been forced underground, literally. Hopper's set up this system where 11 can only move around Hawkins through the old tunnel network from Season 2. Remember those tunnels the Mind Flayer created under the town? They're still there, and they've become Elle's primary way of getting anywhere without being spotted. She crawls through these dark, claustrophobic passages to reach different parts of town, always one step ahead of the military. I mean, she can't catch a break. After everything she's been through, saving the world multiple times, she's reduced to hiding like a fugitive in her own town. It's exhausting just to watch. The training sequences with Hopper and Joyce show that 11's been working on regaining and strengthening her powers. She lost them at the end of Season 3, got them back through the Nina project in Season 4, and now she's trying to push them even further. She needs to be ready for Vecna, and Hopper's helping her prepare, even though he's terrified of putting her in danger. When the sonic weapon gets deployed in Episode 3, it's the first time we see something that can truly neutralize 11. She's facing soldiers, getting ready to fight, and then this weapon activates. She immediately collapses, blood pouring from her nose, completely helpless. It's a brutal reminder that despite her power, she's still vulnerable. The infiltration of the military facility with Hopper is one of Volume 1's tensest sequences. They're sneaking through the Upside Down, trying to avoid detection, and when they discover Carly instead of Vecna, it throws their entire plan into chaos. 11's shocked to see another number, especially one she thought was free and safe. To be honest, the tension around 11 never lets up in Volume 1. Every scene with her carries this weight of knowing the military could find her at any moment, that Dr. K is getting closer. Even when she's with Hopper and Joyce, there's no real safety. 11's still the military's primary target going into Volume 2, and that pursuit isn't stopping anytime soon. Now let's talk about some of the practical mysteries, like how the Resistance actually operates under occupation. Volume 1 introduces this brilliant system called crawls, where the group coordinates missions into the Upside Down via radio broadcasts. Steve and Robin are running a morning radio show on WSQK, this local station that's still broadcasting despite the military occupation. On the surface, it's just a typical morning show with music, banter, and community updates. But underneath that, it's actually a coded information network for the Resistance. They use the radio to coordinate what they call crawls, which are missions where Hopper sneaks into the Upside Down to search for Vecna. The group can't communicate openly because the military's monitoring everything, so they've developed this whole system of coded language that sounds innocent to anyone listening casually, but carries specific meaning to the people involved. I think this is a clever Resistance setup. It feels very Red Dawn, this idea of civilians organising secret operations right under the military's nose. Steve and Robin's chemistry makes the radio show believable too, like it's genuinely just two people chatting about music and local news. The first crawl we see goes catastrophically wrong in Episode 1. Hopper's in the Upside Down, searching for Vecna's lair, when a Demogorgon ambushes a military convoy. The attack forces Hopper to retreat deeper into the dimension to avoid being spotted. Meanwhile, Will's having a telepathic vision of the exact same attack, his connection to the hive mind showing him what's happening in real time. What makes the crawls so tense is that every time Hopper goes into the Upside Down, there's a proper risk he won't come back. The military controls the main gate at Max Zed, so Hopper's using smaller rifts and passages that are less secure. He's navigating hostile territory, avoiding demogorgons, searching for a villain who could kill him instantly. The coordination required is impressive. Steve and Robin broadcast the signals. Other members of the group monitor military movements. Someone needs to make sure Hopper has a clear exit. It's this whole operation that requires everyone working together, which is why Dustin's grief and isolation become such a problem. When one person isn't functioning properly, the whole system falls apart. Fun fact, the radio station WSQK stands for The Squawk. And there are these photos Ross Duffer posted showing a van with the station's logo. The attention to detail in building out this resistance infrastructure is really impressive. The crawls also show how much the situation in Hawkins has changed. In earlier seasons, going into the Upside Down was this desperate emergency measure. Now it's almost routine, this dangerous but necessary operation they run multiple times. The apocalypse has been normalized, which is both impressive in terms of the group's adaptation and properly depressing. The crawl system demonstrates how organized and sophisticated the resistance has become after 18 months of occupation. But not everything in Volume 1 got explained or addressed. Steve Harrington continues his streak of taking massive amounts of damage and somehow staying functional. Let's do a quick recap. Season 1, he gets absolutely battered by Jonathan Byers in a fistfight. Season 2, Billy Hargrove beats him unconscious with a plate. Season 3, the Russians torture him and he takes multiple hits to the face. Season 4, the Demobats attack him and he gets thrown around during the Vecna fight. Volume 1 doesn't give him a break either. He's still getting into scrapes, still taking hits, still somehow walking it off like it's nothing. The guy should have serious brain damage by now. Multiple concussions, facial trauma. That time Billy basically used his head as a punching bag. Any normal person would be struggling with memory, coordination, basic cognitive function. But Steve's fine. He's still the babysitter, still protecting everyone, still cracking jokes and being responsible. His face is constantly covered in bruises and cuts, but he never seems to suffer long-term consequences. No hospital visits, no recovery time, just Steve being Steve. I mean, the guy's basically indestructible. It's become this running joke in the fandom that Steve has plot armor made of actual armor. Joe Keery leans into it too, playing Steve with this casual resilience that makes the injuries feel almost routine. To be fair, he's very durable. Maybe he's got an unusually thick skull, both literally and figuratively. Maybe all those years of playing sports built up some kind of superhuman tolerance for getting hit. Or maybe the Duffers just really like putting Steve through physical comedy. The show acknowledges his injuries visually. He's always banged up, always looking like he's been through hell. But functionally, Steve remains one of the most capable members of the group. He can still fight, still think clearly, still coordinate missions and protect the kids. Steve's durability is either plot armor or he's secretly superhuman. And honestly, I don't know which is more likely. But we're definitely not complaining because Steve's brilliant and we need him to survive. But Steve's not the only thing that strains believability in Volume 1. Even with Hawkins under military occupation and children being abducted, the parental supervision remains hilariously minimal. You'd think with the town in a state of emergency, massive rifts to another dimension, and a literal military presence, parents would be keeping a closer eye on their kids. But no, the teenagers are still running around at all hours, coordinating resistance operations and sneaking into the Upside Down with basically zero oversight. Ted Wheeler is the champion of oblivious parenting, as always. The man slept through government agents searching his house, demogorgons in his pool, and basically every major supernatural event. Volume 1 finally forces him to wake up when a demogorgon breaks into Holly's bedroom and attacks him and Karen directly. He gets injured trying to protect Holly, which is the most engaged we've ever seen him as a parent. Karen Wheeler, to be fair, steps up after Holly's abduction. She's devastated, actively working with authorities, doing everything she can. But before that moment, even she didn't seem overly concerned about Mike constantly disappearing, or Nancy being out at weird hours doing dangerous things. The other parents are mostly absent. Dustin's mum, Claudia, appears briefly, but has no idea about the fights he's getting into or the dangerous missions he's running. Lucas's parents show up occasionally, but aren't tracking his movements. Max's mum is dealing with her own grief over Billy, and isn't in any state to supervise anyone. I mean, there's a literal military occupation happening. There are checkpoints, curfews, and armed soldiers everywhere, and yet somehow the kids are still managing to coordinate secret radio broadcasts, run infiltration missions, and basically operate a full resistance network without their parents noticing. To be fair, it's hard to track teenagers when the world's falling apart, and the 80s setting gives them the excuse that parental supervision was just different back then. Kids had more freedom, less constant contact, fewer ways for parents to monitor their location. But still, there's a difference between 80s freedom and your child literally fighting interdimensional monsters while you're at home having a cup of tea. The show's always had this issue, and Volume 1 doesn't change it. The parents either don't know what's happening, or they're conveniently elsewhere when major events go down. It's a narrative necessity, because the story needs the kids to be the heroes, but it's still a bit absurd. The lack of parental supervision remains consistent even during an apocalypse, which is both impressive and slightly ridiculous. Now let's talk about some older mysteries that Volume 1 didn't address at all. Carly's back, but Volume 1 didn't tell us anything about the other numbers from Hawkins' lab. We've now seen 3 test subjects from the Hawkins lab program: 11, Carly, 8, and Henry Creel, 1. That's it. 3 out of what should have been at least 11, possibly more. So where are the others? The Season 4 flashback showed us the 1979 massacre at the lab. 1, manipulated by young 11 into removing his power-suppressing chip, went on this rampage and killed nearly everyone. We saw the bodies of children in the Rainbow Room, their bones snapped by Henry's telekinesis, so presumably most of the other numbers died that day. But were they all there? Did every single test subject happen to be in the Rainbow Room when Henry attacked? Kaylee clearly escaped at some point before the massacre, which proves not everyone was in the building, so it's possible others got out too. Volume 1 brings Carly back, but doesn't address whether any other numbers survived. There's no mention of 2 through 7, or 9, 10, or 12, and beyond if they existed. The show's had 5 seasons to bring them up, and apart from Carly's 1 episode in Season 2, they've been completely ignored. To be honest, I think this thread is just dropped. The Duffers have 4 episodes left to wrap up Vecna: the Mind Flayer, the Upside Down, Max's fate, Will's powers, and loads of other storylines. Introducing more lab subjects at this point would just muddy the waters. I mean, they've got enough going on. Between the 12 children Vecna's collecting, the mysterious wall in the Upside Down, and all the character arcs that need resolution, there's no room for a subplot about finding other numbers. It's a bit disappointing because the lab program was this massive thing, years of experiments on multiple children, and we've only explored 3 of them in any depth. But narrative necessity means some threads have to be left behind. The other numbers are probably gone for good, and that's fine. The story we're getting is already packed enough. Speaking of things we're not getting full explanations on, let's talk about the Demogorgons. Volume 1 had loads of Demogorgons, but we still don't really understand how they work. Episode 4 features this massive Demogorgon attack on the Max Z base. They're swarming the compound, attacking soldiers, and generally causing chaos alongside Vecna. There are dozens of them, all coordinated, all moving with purpose. It's one of the biggest Demogorgon sequences we've seen in the entire series. But even after watching them in action again, their biology remains mysterious. We know from Season 2 that they have a life cycle: slug to polywog to demodog to full Demogorgon. Dart showed us that progression pretty clearly. But how they reproduce, how many exist, whether they breed naturally or get created somehow, none of that's explained. One interesting detail Volume 1 adds is that wounded Demogorgons retreat to the mysterious circular wall in the Upside Down. When Dustin's group is tracking one, in episode 4, they follow its blood trail straight to that wall, so there's definitely a connection between the creatures and whatever's hidden at the centre of the Upside Down. The intelligence level still feels inconsistent. The Season 1. Demogorgon seemed relatively smart, learning to avoid traps and hunt strategically. But the ones in Volume 1 act more like animals, just following orders from the hive mind. Are they sentient, or are they just biological drones controlled by Vecna? Will killing 3 of them with his psychic powers in episode 4 is brilliant visually, but doesn't tell us much about what they actually are. He taps into Vecna's control over the hive mind and turns it against the creatures. But that just confirms they're part of the network, not what they're made of or how they function. I'd say we're not getting a biology lesson at this point. The show's got bigger fish to fry than explaining Demogorgon reproduction cycles. They're scary foot soldiers. They serve Vecna, and that's enough for the story. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. The creatures are iconic, they're terrifying, and they work perfectly as the ground troops in Vecna's army. Whether they're bred or spawned or magically created, the effect is the same. Demogorgon biology remains one of those background mysteries that probably won't ever get fully explained, and that's fine. But there's one creature-related question Volume 1 did raise that's got everyone confused. Volume 1 introduced some terminology that's got fans properly confused: Dimension X and how it relates to the Upside Down. In episode 3, when Max is explaining her situation to Holly inside Vecna's mindscape, she mentions Dimension X. She's describing the cave where she's been hiding, this Nevada desert landscape that Henry Creel refuses to enter, and she refers to it as connected to Dimension X. It's the first time we've heard that term in the show itself, though fans of the first Shadow play have been talking about it for a while. The first Shadow, the stage prequel that explores Henry Creel's origin story, reveals that young Henry wandered into a cave in Nevada when his family was living there. Inside, he found stolen government technology, some kind of experimental portal device. When he activated it, he was transported to Dimension X and infected with the particles that eventually gave him his powers. Those particles are what later became the Mind Flayer, or at least that's what the play suggests. Henry was essentially patient zero for the Upside Down's corruption, infected by something from this other realm. The experience traumatized him so deeply that even decades later, as Vecna, he refuses to go near the memory of that cave. So here's the question: is Dimension X different from the Upside Down, or are they the same thing? I think Dimension X might be the original source dimension, and the Upside Down is like a copy or evolution of it. When Eleven opened the gates in 1983, maybe she didn't just create a portal to an existing place. Maybe she created a new dimension based on Dimension X, one that latched onto Hawkins and froze it in time at that moment. That would explain why the Upside Down looks like Hawkins specifically. It's not a naturally occurring parallel dimension. It's something that was shaped by the gate opening, influenced by Henry's infection from Dimension X, and moulded into this corrupted mirror of our world. To be honest, this is a bit confusing, and the show needs to clarify it. Volume 1 drops this terminology without really explaining the distinction, which leaves viewers trying to piece together information from the play and the series. According to the Duffer Brothers, Volume 2 will finally explain what the Upside Down actually is and how it all connects. Matt Duffer specifically said they'll address the mythology and the origins, so presumably this Dimension X question will get answered along with the frozen in time mystery and the circular wall revelation. My bet is that Dimension X is the primordial chaos dimension, the source of the particles and the Mind Flayer, and the Upside Down is what happens when that chaos gets filtered through a human consciousness, like Henry's, and then anchored to a specific place and time through Eleven's gate. But that's just speculation. Volume 2 will hopefully make it all clear, because right now it's one of those things where you need external context from the play to fully understand what the show's referencing. The Dimension X versus Upside Down relationship needs clarification, and I think we'll get it soon. Speaking of things we're waiting for, let's talk about what Volume 2 needs to answer. With only 4 episodes left, 3 dropping on Christmas Day, and the finale on New Year's Eve, there's still loads that needs answering. The biggest question, the one everyone's obsessed with, is what's inside that circular wall in the Upside Down. Dustin worked out that it's hiding something at the centre, right where Hawkins' lab sits in the real world. Is that where Vecna's actually hiding? Is it the source of the Upside Down's power? The origin point of everything? Then there's the time freeze mystery. Why is the Upside Down frozen at November 6, 1983? The Duffers promised we'd get this answer in Volume 2, and honestly, it's about time. This has been bugging fans since Season 4, and it feels like the key to understanding what the Upside Down actually is. Related to that, we need clarity on Dimension X. How does it connect to the Upside Down? Is one the source of the other? Are they the same thing viewed from different angles? The terminology's been introduced, but Volume 1 didn't explain the relationship properly. Max's situation is another massive question. Can her consciousness return to her body? She's alive inside Vecna's mindscape, helping Holly and the other children, but is there a way to wake her up physically? Lucas has been waiting 18 months for her to open her eyes, and we need to know if that's possible or if she's trapped forever. Dr. K's real agenda needs revealing. Is she genuinely trying to save Hawkins, or is she weaponizing the Upside Down for her own purposes? Linda Hamilton's playing her with this cold efficiency that makes her motives impossible to read. Volume 2 needs to show us whose side she's actually on. Will's powers are just starting to develop. How far can he take them? Can he actually challenge Vecna directly, or is he limited to manipulating creatures in the hive mind? The Duffers have been clear that Will's proximity-based abilities are different from Eleven's, so we need to see the full extent of what he can do. The 12 children Vecna's collecting, what happens if he completes that ritual? He's got 4 now, needs 8 more. If he gets all 12, what does that unlock? Total merger of dimensions? An army of controlled psychics? The end of the world as we know it? Can the captured children be saved? Or are they already too far gone? Holly, her friends, and whoever else Vecna takes, is there a way to free them from his control or break the connection? The Steve, Nancy, Jonathan love triangle has to resolve. Someone's making a choice. Someone's heart is breaking. And with 4 episodes left, there's no more room to drag it out. The big question underlying everything, is Vecna the ultimate villain, or is the Mind Flayer the real threat? Season 4 suggested Vecna shaped the Mind Flayer, but the first shadow hints the Mind Flayer infected Henry first. Who's actually in control? Volume 2 needs to answer this because it determines what the final battle actually looks like. And of course, who survives? The finale's supposed to be film length, a massive conclusion to 9 years of story. Someone major is probably dying. Multiple someones possibly. The Duffers have never been afraid to kill characters when it serves the story. I mean, that's a lot to cover in 4 episodes. Even with extended runtimes, it's an ambitious amount of storytelling. But if Volume 1 is any indication, the Duffers know what they're doing. To be honest, I trust them. They've been planning this ending since before. Season 1 aired, they know where it's going, and Volume 1 proved they can deliver satisfying answers while raising new questions. Volume 2 has massive expectations riding on it, but I think they'll stick the landing. Now let's talk about some of the fun mysteries and weird details from Volume 1. Before Holly was taken, she'd been talking to Mr. Whatsit, and Volume 1 makes it pretty clear that was Vecna grooming her. In Episode 1, Holly's teacher mentions to Karen and Ted that Holly's been talking to herself during class. She's having full conversations with someone who isn't there, someone she calls Mr. Whatsit. The teacher's concerned, the parents are worried, but they assume it's just an imaginary friend. Kids have those, right? Except it's not imaginary at all. It's Vecna appearing to Holly in a friendly disguise, building trust before he takes her. This is his MO with children, creating a non-threatening persona to manipulate them. With his season 4 victims like Chrissy and Fred, he appeared as people they knew, exploiting their trauma. With young children like Holly, he goes for the imaginary friend approach. I mean, this is properly disturbing when you think about it. Vecna's been talking to this little girl for weeks, maybe months, getting into her head, making her comfortable with his presence. By the time the Demogorgon comes for her, she's already psychologically primed to trust the voice, to follow where it leads. The grooming aspect is one of the creepiest things Vecna does in the entire series. He's not just physically abducting children, he's manipulating them psychologically first, making them feel safe with him, building a relationship, so when he reveals himself, they're already under his influence. It's worth noting that Holly's not the only child who mentions imaginary friends in Volume 1. Some of her friends at school have similar stories, which suggests Vecna was targeting multiple children simultaneously. He was building his collection methodically, grooming several potential vessels at once. To be honest, the Mr. What's-It detail shows how calculated and patient Vecna is. He's not rushing, he's not sloppy. He spent months setting this up, ensuring the children he takes are already conditioned to accept his control. The name Mr. What's-It is also interesting. It's vague, non-threatening, the kind of name a child would give to a mysterious but friendly presence. Vecna's clearly studied how to appear non-threatening to young minds. Mr. What's-It represents Vecna at his most insidious, targeting the most vulnerable and innocent victims through psychological manipulation. Speaking of disturbing plot elements that didn't get much focus, let's talk about Russia. The Russia plot from seasons 3 and 4 seems to be resolved with Hopper back in Hawkins, but Volume 1 doesn't mention it at all. Hopper spent most of season 4 in a Russian prison camp in Kamchatka, fighting Demogorgons in a gladiator-style arena while the Russians conducted experiments. Joyce and Murray flew to Russia to rescue him, which they did successfully. Then everyone made it back to Hawkins for the final battle against Vecna. Volume 1 picks up 18 months later, and Russia's just not a factor anymore. There's no mention of the Kamchatka facility, no discussion of whether the Russians still have Demogorgons or access to upside-down creatures, no follow-up on any of it. Hopper's fully integrated back into Hawkins' life, living with Joyce and helping Eleven train. Murray appears briefly in Volume 1, but his role is minimal. He discovers Jonathan's engagement ring and makes some observations about the love triangle, but there's no reference to his Russian adventures or any ongoing international intrigue. To be honest, I think Russia's just done. The plot served its purpose getting Hopper back and giving Joyce and Murray a Season 4 storyline, but now it's in the rearview mirror. The show's got enough going on with Vecna, the military occupation, and the 12 children without adding Russian complications. I mean, they've got 4 episodes left to wrap up the main story. Bringing Russia back into it would just dilute the focus. The final battle is happening in Hawkins, not Kamchatka. The threat is Vecna and the Mind Flayer, not Soviet experiments. It's possible Volume 2 will mention something about Russia's response to the upside-down going public. When that massive rift opened at the end of Season 4, it wasn't exactly subtle. News crews were there. The whole town saw it. That kind of interdimensional event probably got international attention. But I doubt we'll see Russian characters or plot lines return. The stories come home to where it started, focusing on the kids and Hawkins itself. The Russia plot gave us some great moments. Hopper's survival, Joyce being a badass, Murray's heroics, but narratively it's wrapped up. Hopper's home, that's what mattered. To be fair, streamlining the focus makes sense for a final season. Keep it contained, keep it personal, don't sprawl too wide. The Russia storyline served its purpose and is probably staying closed. Now let's talk about some timeline oddities in Volume 1. Volume 1 is set 18 months after Season 4, which means it's full 1987, and the age gaps between actors and characters are more obvious than ever. The kids are supposed to be around 16 years old at this point. Will, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas would all be in their mid-teens, dealing with high school and teenage drama alongside the apocalypse, but the actors playing them are all in their early 20s now. Finn Wolfhard, Noah Schnapp, Gutton Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, they've all aged naturally over the 9 years since the show started. It's not the show's fault, obviously. You can't stop actors from growing up. But there is this disconnect where the characters are meant to be younger than the people playing them actually are. Mike's supposed to be a teenager, but Finn Wolfhard's got this adult presence now that's hard to ignore. To be fair, they all look great, and the show handles it by leaning into the maturity. The apocalyptic setting helps, because these characters have been through absolute hell. They're fighting monsters, coordinating resistance operations, dealing with trauma that would age anyone. So the actors looking older than their characters actually works for the story's tone. Holly's recasting with Nell Fisher makes sense given the character's now a major part of the plot. The original Holly was a toddler in earlier seasons, and they needed someone who could handle significant dialogue and emotional scenes. Fisher does a brilliant job, and the age jump works because enough time has passed in universe. Will's birthday remains a sore spot for fans, though. The show established it was his birthday in Season 2, but then Season 4 had that painting showing his birthday as March 22, which contradicts what we were told. The Duffers admitted they messed up the timeline, but it still bugs people. I mean, it's television. Continuity errors happen, especially across multiple seasons filmed years apart. The important thing is whether the story works, and Volume 1 proves the maturity of the cast actually enhances the final season stakes. The timeline's imperfect, but Volume 1 makes it work by embracing the character's growth rather than fighting against it. And here are a bunch of weird details from Volume 1 that don't fit anywhere else but are worth mentioning. And here are a bunch of weird details from Volume 1 that don't fit anywhere else but are worth mentioning. The November dates pattern keeps appearing in ways that feel significant. Will disappeared November 6th, 1983. Holly was taken November 3rd, 1987. Henry Creel's play opened November 6th, 1959. The Upside Down froze on November 6th, 1983. It's got to mean something specific, and the fact that the show keeps emphasizing these dates suggests Volume 2 will reveal why. The organic sacs on the circular wall are properly mysterious. Dr. K's dissecting them. They bleed this weird fluid, and they look similar to the tentacles Vecna used on Will. What are they? Are they part of the wall's structure, or are they something Vecna's growing? The show doesn't explain, but they're clearly important. Why do Demogorgons specifically retreat to the wall when they're wounded? Dustin's group tracks one there in Episode 4, and it's heavily implied this is where they go to heal or regenerate. Does the wall have restorative properties? Is it like a nest or spawning ground? The sonic weapon technology raises questions about how the military developed it so quickly. Did they study Eleven's powers after Season 4? Did they capture and experiment on other psychics? The weapon's specifically designed to target people with abilities, which means they had to understand how those abilities work on a biological level. WSQK, the radio station Steve and Robin use, has this whole aesthetic that feels very 80s. The van, the branding, the morning show format, it's all brilliantly realised. But how are they broadcasting without the military noticing it's being used for resistance coordination? Are the soldiers just not paying attention? Or is the group that good at hiding their messages in plain sight? The small character moments throughout Volume 1 are lovely. Robin and Will's conversation about acceptance, Murray finding the engagement ring, Hopper's Sarah flashbacks, Lucas sitting by Max's bedside. These quiet moments between the action sequences give the season its emotional weight. Visual details that might be clues, the way the upside-down particles fall in certain scenes, the specific pattern of vines on the wall, the architecture of Dr. K's facility. The Duffers are known for planting visual Easter eggs, and Volume 1's probably full of them. The fact that nobody in Hawkins seems to recognise the main characters as either local heroes or suspects in the supernatural events is a bit funny. These kids have been at the centre of every major incident for years, but they still walk around relatively anonymously. I suppose the military presence and general chaos gives them cover. Why hasn't anyone tried to properly evacuate Hawkins? The town's been torn apart by a massive rift. There are monsters, and it's under military quarantine. Yet loads of civilians are still there, including children. You'd think the government would forcibly relocate people. The crawls happen multiple times, but we only see detailed sequences for a few of them. How many has Hopper actually done over the 18 months? Dozens? Hundreds? Has he mapped out significant portions of the Upside Down? Or is it too vast and changing for that? Also, what happened to all the tunnels from Season 2? Hopper and 11 use underground passages to move around, but are those the same tunnels, or new ones? The show doesn't clarify whether the Mind Flayer's tunnel system from Season 2 is still intact, or if these are different passages. These little mysteries might get answered in Volume 2, or they might just be atmospheric details that don't need explanation. Either way, they're fun to think about while we wait. And speaking of waiting, let's talk about what we're hoping for from the finale. With the finale dropping on New Year's Eve, everyone's got opinions on what they want to see, and I've definitely got mine. I think Will deserves to be the hero after everything he's been through. Max needs to wake up and get a proper ending. The love triangle needs resolution, even if it's painful. Someone major is probably dying, multiple someones possibly, and that's going to hurt. Most importantly, I want answers. What's in that wall? Why November 6th matters, whether Vecna or the Mind Flayer is the real threat. The Duffers have promised to tie everything together, and I trust them. Whatever happens, Stranger Things has been an incredible journey. Volume 1 proved they know how to deliver, and I'm both excited and nervous for how it all ends. And that, my dear friends, is where we'll end tonight's video. We've covered mysteries old and new, what Volume 1 revealed, and what we're still waiting to learn. Volume 2 drops on Christmas Day with 3 more episodes, and the finale arrives on New Year's Eve. Until then, stay safe, sweet dreams, and may your holidays be free of demogorgons.